Hello and welcome back to episode 2 on this mini-series on entrepreneurship. We have a new guest which I'll introduce shortly, but our two entrepreneurs are the same. We've had a fantastic discussion in our previous episode with Tasneem, and really I think a very insightful, deep understanding of the process to ideate, to come up with that sort of perfect idea, if you wish, before you start executing. In this particular session, we're going to be talking about, broadly speaking, the perfect product. And now that we have a better idea of your idea, let us discuss what your product is about. Although in this case, it's a service. Okay. To build a great company, of course, you need to build a great product. And while there are no hard and fast rules to building a great product, you may be helping yourself by understanding why products fail. We acknowledge that intuition is important, but it is not enough. We must do some hard work to arrive at a great product, and that hard work includes building, launching, iterating, improving, and then repeating the process over and over until you come close to what is considered a great product or the perfect product. And through it all, we must be mindful of our customer experience, or the buzzword customer centricity. So simplicity, effectiveness, and wide applications, these are just some of the attributes of your product that your product should have. Building a product is always a work in progress, because every product can use an upgrade or an update from time to time. And no one has taught us that better than the software developers, right? Every few months, they keep on adding a new feature, and you're forced to upgrade and improve your experience. With a good plan and thorough research, you should be able to come up with an idea that will help you build a great product. Think of the customer-centric products by utilizing design thinking as a tool that will be used for the creation of the optimal product. So that's a mouthful I've said now, right? However, we are fortunate to have Mr. Zubair Sader with us today. Zubair is the co-founder of Akoma, a steward-led company with a strong focus on sustainable development. Zubair, thank you for joining us. Zubair has a background in architecture and an MBA where he spent time researching innovation and creativity. He is intrigued by how people interact with space, whether in the context of concrete urban spaces or vast natural ones, and inspired to use the experience to add substance to the economic, social, and built environmental interventions. Zubair, I think we got a part of our last discussion, and maybe we leave it to you to take us through the next stages.
Thanks, Zain. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Shazia, Lucky, good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is that we wanted to talk a little bit more about design thinking, or at least design thinking and the way that we approach our product or our service. And Hussein alluded to it earlier on, it's very much about a customer centricity model. So really, really understanding what your customers are about and what they have to do. So I think one of the main things is how design thinking, the process of it is a creative problem-solving approach with a very human-centered core. It allows you as an organization to focus on the people that you're actually serving or the products that you're actually building for those people. One of the main questions to ask, I think, regarding that is like, what is the human need behind whatever product or service that you guys are actually building? To maybe put it into a little bit of context, is you ideally need to be able to pull together what is desirable from a human point of view with what is technologically feasible and economically viable. It's this sort of 3 points that you have to actually work together. So it's desirability, viability, and feasibility. And broadly, I mean, if you think about it as desirability being the first trait that you actually need to look at, and how the overlap between desirability, feasibility, and viability. And these are the three things that you actually always need to be able to look at to understand what is the score of what you're trying to find. This is always the place to start. At the point of desirability, what do you need? What does your customer need? What is the problem that they are actually trying to fix? Once you look through that, you have to look through feasibility and viability. All of these things that overlap and interaction of where you're going to find it is going to be your solution. And this solution might not necessarily be, it's not the first thing that you're going to be able to find. And that's one of the processes of, I guess, this design thinking approach. I hate the fact where you actually have to be seen as like a design thinking practitioner, because it's never really the case. It's really just about solving problems creatively, trying to find out different solutions to, like thinking like a designer, being able to look at a solution from another point of view. What this does, or what design thinking in general does for teams, is it helps you understand the unmet needs of people, of products. It reduces your risk with new launches. It allows you to sort of generate these like revolutionary ideas. And it helps you to iterate and learn through that iteration. So those are like a few steps and phases that have to go through design thinking, and we can go into that a little bit more. But I think in general, it's always about the customer experience or the user experience. Like what do they desire? Start with that, and then start looking at how viability is, what's the feasibility, and trying to find that sweet spot between that.
So if I may ask from my side, I wanted to know that desirability, you mean from our customers, meaning our potential sponsors, we should be finding out what is it that they desire. I wanted to know from your side, like when you say desirability, is it from the people that you are trying to help, which will be the students, the schools, or from the potential sponsors themselves?
So that's a good question. I think sort of understanding your guys' business plan and understanding the product, or actually in your guys' case, the service or what you're trying to offer. It seems to me like there's specifically two points. There's the people that you are trying to help, the schools that you're trying to help, as well as also your other customers would be the corporates or any of the other funders that you're actually trying to get to. So there's essentially two problems that you need to start looking at from there. Okay. And that overlap in that problem starts giving you what the desirability is. Okay.
So remember that in your case, you're not selling a can of baked beans, right? Because a can of baked beans, the person who buys it is also the person who pays for it. Or the person who eats it is also the person who pays for it. So in that case, your customer is to a large extent one entity. In your case, because you're a service provider and you're depending on grants and charities or whatever it is to continue, you're delivering a service to one place, but you're being funded by another place. So you need to keep both of those in mind. It's a little bit more tricky than just selling a can of baking, because you need to convince that person to be able to pay you. In this case, whether you do a good job or a bad job, hopefully you do a great job, these guys who are your funders are obliged in some respect to sort of pay you. I don't know if it helps.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you guys are essentially the network connectors within this whole space. That's where you sort of positioning yourself, being able to sort of take from one place and give to another place, and in that sort of solve the problem. The understanding of desirability, and going back to your thing, is like really going back and understanding the problem from both of your customers' perspective. So from the school side, it's going there and finding out like what is it actually that you need. And it's very important, especially at this year, for the first stage of it, not to necessarily just make assumptions. Like this whole idea of research. And there's sort of like a few types of research, and we'll get into that now also. I just want to talk to you about that. It's about literally going and finding out from them, from the customers, how can we help you? Where are you seeing the issue? I think taking that on and then going from there, and then going, if you guys are identifying, because I think that's the first place that you actually need to start, because that will lead you on to either identifying, okay, we actually need corporate sponsors, or maybe that's not the path that we actually need to go to. Maybe we need to go to private individuals, maybe we need to go to government, maybe we need to partner with other sort of NPOs, whatever it is. So that starting point of understanding that and then going further is probably like, it's critical.
I think Tasneem covered that largely in her discussion with you, but we can touch on it again, Zubair. I just want to clear one thing though, right? I don't consider myself a creative person at all.
No.
I'm saying to myself, in my private discussions, so in my own mind and between my mind and my heart, right? But I just want to be clear that when we're talking of design thinking, we're not looking at the person who can do a good sketch or a good art. The design thinking is not about the ability to draw or to paint the right colors or choose it's not about that. Just to clarify a little bit about what we mean by design thinking in a context.
So I always
and I'm talking to an architect, that's what I'm saying. So we have an architect who's talking of design thinking, and I don't want necessarily our entrepreneurs to start thinking about that. I know nothing. I can't draw a car. I still draw a stick figure man. That's what we're talking about, right?
And if you have to be drawing a stick figure man, that's okay because that's your representation of what it is,
right.
And that's the whole thing about it. It's not. It's just like how you view the world, and it's about It's really about looking at it from an artist's point of view. An artist in like a very broad sense of the word, not necessarily someone that can paint, someone that can sculpt things, but it's about looking at these problems from a different perspective, and that's what I think like the essence of design thinking is. It's just about, it's really about perspective, just making sure that you. To use that sort of overused term like thinking out of the box, which I don't really love, but it's this whole idea of just sort of like removing yourself and like maybe turning something around and looking at it from another way. It shows up a hell of a lot more. It will give you a lot more information about what is it that you're trying to achieve. So that's what I believe is like the essence of design.
Yeah. So sorry for the deviation, but okay, let's get back in. So we're talking about desirability, and that goes back to the core of what you're offering and what you're looking to offer as a service. And then your two target audiences there is going to be your two potential stakeholders, the people you deliver to and your potential funders. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, I think that there is, in essence, as your starting point, from looking at that, and then obviously from there, then you start moving on. So that comes through a process. Obviously, there's a standard sense of how you can approach. You can have this design thinking approach, and that's maybe now going into like the nuts and bolts of how to look at it. It's not a rigid idea. There's no book out there that's necessarily going to take, like, these are the steps that you have to take to be able to make sure that that everything is design thinking and tick. No, it's not that, but it's sort of a nice framework and like
principles.
There's nice framework and principles about how to go out and begin this type of process. And in terms of phases and how you approach not only the desirability but the viability and the feasibility of it is, you start by framing your question. So it's about identifying like a driving question that inspires others to search for creative solutions. What would be, if you guys had to start looking at things, like what would be the question that you think you might be able to ask a school, for that matter? Like, what are your needs? And maybe you guys can think about that, or at least go through that a little bit.
So my question is desirability. Basically, when we're trying to approach both, the township schools and the corporate world, are we trying to look at what benefits both of them to be able to reach our target or to reach what we're trying to do, basically?
Yes, the benefits definitely, but I think that also comes through. Again, and I'm going to reiterate again, it's really about solving the problem. What are the problems?
Like, what problem are you solving for the corporate, and what problem are you solving for the school?
Exactly that. Those are the questions that be very sort of problem focused, like or challenge focused. I actually prefer
Use the
using
word
the word
challenge.
challenge instead of problems. Because
Why
it
I
also-
ask is because, you know, when you get to a corporate company and you sort of ask these questions or you pitch something, they obviously want to look at it in a way of what are we getting from this whole thing. So that's why I'm asking if desirability is included. Are we looking at what benefits the both sides?
Yeah.
Because obviously the schools are also going to be like, okay, yeah, we're getting something from this, and corporate is also going to be like, okay, we have to benefit from this in some way or another. So
Nobody's going to give you money for free,
yeah.
except for your parents.
and even then,
Yeah, there's permanent conditions when they're 65.
Yeah.
So just take it for granted that no matter how much they may give in CSI, how much they may promote how good they are as corporate social citizens, whatever it is, ultimately no one does anything for mahala. They want something in return, and it may be something tangible sometimes and something intangible, like put my logo there or mention my name or drop my name. And for them, that means a lot.
Brand recognition.
Right, whatever it is, yeah. So yeah, how do you position it in that?
and that's it. And I think you got it exactly spot on when you said you're going to go to a corporate and they're going to say what can I get in return? That's their question. That's their problem. Like, how do you need to be able to understand like what they want in return, like what they want, and Hussein put it there. It's like, is it a need for them to have 10% of their budget going to CSR? Or is it a need to have visibility in a township setting? From where your guys' perspective is, what are those questions? And then in the same thing, you have to go and ask that same question, like, what is the problem? Like, what am I going to get from this to the schools? Like, what actually is their problem? Like, that they don't have, that you're trying to solve, that they don't have the space and the facilities to do this, that they don't have equipment, that they don't have time. I know you guys mentioned a lot about nutrition or lack of nutrition or lack of good meals, which is like a very critical part in being able to, and I'm glad you guys sort of looked at that, because it's a very critical part in before you actually go out and do sports or any of the activities.
You have to have a tangible meal.
Yes, you have to have something.
Before you sit in classroom trying to understand ABC and 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
nutrition is going to be key. No, fantastic. Yeah.
So those are so that would then be one of the problems that you need to solve, and I think that's also something that you guys can maybe look at a little bit more sort of rigorously within your business plan, because sometimes those are sort of smaller issues or smaller challenges that you are able to solve from maybe a corporate side. Is there generally feeding schemes around? Are there abilities for some of the large supermarkets and stuff that are based in the area to be able to donate these type of foods, and like, what do they then get in return? Maybe it's just a matter of making sure that some of the stock on the shelves are nearing a date where they're going to actually have to,
expired stock.
So before it even gets to that point, let them actually make much better use out of it. Looking how you can start connecting all of these people. Once people within the neighborhood start seeing that, hey, this certain store is donating food, it helps them in terms of their visibility within the area. People are more likely to go buy other stuff from them. So that is other problems we're trying to solve for that side. So it's very complex into all of these different types of relationships that you need to manage. And you guys as like this network operators, how you guys have to go and start managing all of these things in between that.
Can you see yourselves doing that? I mean, can you see yourself your role in that?
In fact, after the first session and this one that we're having, I've just realized something. We were focused on saying the big corporates will be our sponsors and things like that. But I just realized right now that there's people who right now who are celebrities and they come from the same background that you come from, and they might be can I say maybe well off right now, and those are the people that would understand the language that we are speaking. If we tell them that, man, where you coming from, this is what is happening, that won't be a new thing. That is something that they know. So I think that would be the first people that would have an interest of maybe helping us trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's and so Also, just this thing about like I looked through some of the financials and like I think a lot of your guys' thing is based on like receiving a lot of donations, through other corporate sponsors or whoever it is. That's not necessarily sort of like the easiest thing to do, especially within a year, unless there is something that they need. It's a lot easier going to someone and saying, I have a solution for you, than saying, hey, listen, give me some money, I want to go and do something else. Like, I think there's a thing, what can you offer? The partnership with the schools, and where do you actually go and start first? Again, my suggestion would be probably to go and start at the school level first, and that's where this whole thing about like inspiration starts. So it's probably like, I guess, the second phase about that. It's about going on and gathering different inspiration from everywhere. So you inspired by actually going out and finding out what people really need. Spend the day at a school, spend afternoons literally at schools, talking to students, seeing what it's about, taking pictures of different things, going back, thinking about it. And you don't need a hell of a lot of that to start generating ideas. And ideas don't have to be like generated through like really expensive things. A pen and a paper, and you go and you sit down and you start writing like every single thing that you can start thinking about, everything that you felt while you were in that environment. Write about, just put down ideas about like what the weather was like, who was around, what the feel, touch, smell, all of these different things that inspired you around it, or that inspired what the solution is starting going to be. It'll start developing a much more sort of rounded idea of what the solution that you're trying to make it. I mean, it might even get to the point of you moving away from what your current focus is. Like it might, particularly because you might start seeing that you don't want to impose a solution onto a problem that might not be there.
That's true.
So you're going to find out like really what's the issue.
Real problem.
And then from there, it's about sort of making all of these ideas that you think about, like trying to make them tangible. Like it's about building. And again, it's like sort of essence of design thinking of what it is, but it's about prototyping, iterating, constantly making something, doing it, coming back, trying again, always building and just making this thing. I think Hussein alluded to that when he was talking about the software developers, always having bugs or always having something. Rather get something out, get feedback from what's happening from people, build upon your product again and get it out again, instead of waiting until you have the perfect product, which is
I've been so focused on that.
Because that can become a very it can become a very crippling thing.
Correct.
When you standing there and trying to always make sure, because the level that you guys would hold yourselves to is different, and you're always looking at the thing and you're looking at it from your eyes and you're looking at it from this perspective, and you've been on it for a week, a month, a year, and you're always focused on the thing. It's very, very difficult to then sort of step away and look at it from somewhere else. Put that product into the market, put that service out into the market, see what feedback it is, and then go back and be like, you know what, this is actually something that was staring me in the face. I didn't realize it because I was focusing on one part.
What is the principle? The thought that comes to my mind is MVP, minimum viable product, right? People have heard of the term minimum viable product. So put something out there that's not necessarily perfect, but what you think is good enough, and hopefully you don't turn people completely against it, but enough feedback to say, okay, I wish it was like this, or I wish it was like that, or something along that line, right? So to a point where you think it's ready, but not yet perfect. And not everything is perfect. And I think we've got enough examples of apps that do that, right? You launch an app and there's a whole lot of bugs, and they put it out as a beta mode, whatever it is. And then people give them feedback, and then they improve on it. And then because of the feedback and the improving, they keep on improving it all the time. So I think maybe that ought to be an approach. But again, keeping in the back of your mind what Nassim said earlier about doing the research before you even get into the market.
And then after that, go out, and it's about testing to learn. Like that's how you're going to be learning. You're going to be learning through testing, through putting your product out, through seeing any of these things. And then I think lastly, like one of those phases about going through that is like sharing the story. So you you craft some sort of like human story, like how does the sort of the human element in your story or in your solution start working it out. Like it helps you put that out. It helps other people start contextualizing what your problem is, and it inspires others to also make a change. I think there's a tendency for some people necessarily to hold on to ideas because you don't want to necessarily give it out because, hey, someone else might come and do that. But not a single person is going to do it like how you do it. If you're sort of confident and bold enough to go and do whatever you're going to do, there's only one group of people that can do it the way that you do it. Like, ideas should never be something that are like constrained. It should never. They just grow so much better when you have lots of different people like inputting different things on it.
That's true.
I agree, especially in our situation where we're not really trying to keep the idea for ourselves. We're actually trying to branch it out so that it reaches many people. It reaches as many people as it can, and as many township schools as it can. And I think that's a very important thing that we actually have to look for, and having people help us in any way that they can, even if it's someone in KwaZulu-Natal saying, "Hey, I saw your idea. I think we can do it this side." So I think that's very big, and that should happen.
Yeah, that's great.
And if they do it under your banner, it will give you that growth and that scale. That's almost a requisite of a enterprise. But if they do it on a different banner, a different name, achieve the same end result. Again, we're not selling baked beans for profit. You're selling a social cause, and the need in this country is so huge that no single NGO can handle all of it on their own. As much as they would want to, no single NGO can. Yours is a collaborative approach, whether you like it or not. Just coming back to that shared story, I think I will, in our fourth episode, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so building that repository or that archives of successes and stories is going to be key when you go to the point of pitch. When you're sitting with a potential group of investors and give them the story of A, B, and C. We went to this school and this was the grades and this was the problem that we were resolving, and see what is happening, over a period of time. That excites because people can then see tangibly. You're not just about sports and nutrition. You've actually made. So don't take anything for granted. Write the stories down, whether it's an individual story, like you said, that young lady that came when you came out of the taxi with a uniform. Hopefully you've inspired her to do something. Write that down. Repeat that in your next story.
I think as we grow, I think at the end of the day, we're not only going to be sports-based, as I see it, because there's so many problems in location schools that I feel like we'd want to touch on, and it's going to grow as bigger than what sports is going to be. And I feel like that's going to be a huge thing at the end of the day, because we're not only going to be focusing on sports, we're going to be focusing on the fact that they don't have space, they don't have enough classrooms to teach kids. Not every teacher,
Well, that's a danger in itself, right? And I may not be an expert in the field, but find your one or two niches. Unfortunately, we can't address everything that we would want to, even if it's in one location, one school, one community, right? Because you don't have an endless bank account. Right? Sure. And even people with endless bank accounts are not able to solve those problems. Right? So find your niche, whether it's one or two, and focus on those and work on them. So we're sorry, man, we're supposed to be talking about design thinking. So but guide us through the process.
But that's it exactly. It's not like, again, I don't believe that it's one. There's no silver bullet for all of these things. It's not like a certain thing. Like for me, this would be. Like just right now, this session is such an important part into really understanding what it's all about, because you're really trying to go and understand like what the issues are. I agree with you, like the focus thing is critical. It's absolutely critical. It's the same thing that sort of I've been going through and struggling with.
There is a part that I don't resonate with that much. And I think the lady that we were in the first session with, she spoke about it, and I think Mr. Hussein also spoke about it. Our perspective was why we try to approach this thing through, let's say, convincing the sponsors first, and that approach. Why? Because let's say maybe you wanted to introduce a sports like rugby in Bekkersdal, for instance. Where are they going to play rugby? where are they going to play rugby? Because there's never been anyone who has been known to, or maybe he played outside, but not in Beggesdal rugby. So there's no rugby field in Beggesdal or cricket field in Beggesdal. So I want to bring cricket or rugby to the kids in the school in Beggesdal. How do I do that if the capital is not that much? That is the part that has been aching me ever since the first session and this. I've been trying to digest that. And
the fact that we're selling before we can be like, yeah, we can start right now. This is what we're showing you, and we're starting with this. That's terrifying, I think.
Yeah, if I may continue from where I left off, I would like to give an example. Before in Beggesdal, there was no basketball court in Beggesdal, so no one played basketball. But as soon as there was a basketball court in Beggesdal, then a couple of guys started springing out from around the area, and they started playing basketball. After a while, there was at least a single team of basketball. When 2 or 3 years before, there was none. So I was thinking that is the way of approaching if you want to get the kids on board. But now, I don't know, maybe people have this different perspective for what I would like to hear from the panel itself.
I mean, again, it goes back to the whole thing about trying to find like what is the issue. So let's take the Beggesdal example. You are going to go there and find out what is the problem that they need. It's not an issue about the problem, or the way I see it, and again, this is just something that I'm seeing, is not that they don't have a basketball field. It's not that they don't have a rugby field. Like, that's not the problem. It's like, why is all of this happening? And asking them, like, what's the bigger need for having kids want to go and play rugby, or want to go and play basketball, or wanting to play any of the sports that you're actually looking at? Like, ask yourself that question. Like, is it just a matter of just getting them active? Because this, like, the sports has this like huge transformative quality. It shows teamwork, it shows leadership, it shows activity, it shows all of these things. Like, go deeper into that. Like, really question yourself, question everything about it, and find out what are all of these things in the background that you actually need to start looking at. Like, why do you want to bring sports into that? Why do you want to bring sports, and what do they need then from that? Like, I'd be hard pressed to think that it's just an hour or two of physical activity that they need after school. But again, that would be an assumption that I'm making on my side, which needs to be going and tested, like, through the investigation process. Find out, like, what are the issues? Is it that kids don't know each other, that they don't play well, that they don't have a safe place to interact, that they don't have facilities, or they don't have like a timeline of seeing, once they finish school, that there's only this very linear path that they have to go through school, get a job, like, that there's no sort of other options to do.
Let me give a slightly different perspective. So, for those of us who are privileged enough to come from better resource communities, I can tell you there are many a cricket field and soccer field that grow wheat, not weeds. No, they grow weeds, not weed. Because there's no interest. So there are communities that have a cricket field or a soccer field, whatever it is, and it's not utilized because there's no interest from the students or the people to use it. That's number one. And there are many a community that don't have a cricket field or a soccer field, where those who are genuinely interested will go somewhere else and exercise their profession. And become very good at it. And so don't necessarily have the chicken and eggs, we have to have this in order. If there's enough interest for people to start rugby, Beggesdal, I don't know what's the closest
it's Western area.
So organize a kumbi and take a group of people to the closest rugby and go and do that for 2 years. That will then show the interest of, that is then your case that you're making to a corporate. See, these guys, for 2 years, we slog every day, we make a 2-hour drive to go and practice, to come back. I think we now deserve a soccer because we've shown our commitment. And that's the other problem with corporate South Africa or sponsorship in general, that we make an appeal, and heartfelt appeal, that they make their spend, and just so that the week after the ribbon cutting, that place lays bare. The computer centers that collect dust at schools, right? The soccer fields that are neglected, right? So again, don't necessarily go with we need A in order to do B. Sometimes you need to do the B and C to justify the A. I don't know if that helps. Yeah. And it may not be the same for all things, right?
I think that's actually an excellent point. So that is one way of looking at solving a challenge, the challenge of not having rugby field there. Looking at partnering with other people, how do we make sure that if the solution to not having rugby is 1, having a facility, 2, having a coach, and 3, having kit, how can you solve those issues? Not necessarily by building a field, hiring a coach, and getting kit. Then it will be okay. Those are the problems. Here's one solution that is saying, and there'll be hundreds, many of these little solutions. One solution is that there's a field that's not being used. Take an under-resourced community and actually move them to that. Then one of the problems there is, okay, how do I move them from here to here? Then it's, okay, let's look at transport companies. Let's look at getting the kids to this place. Second thing is about coaches. You don't have a coach, or there's no money to necessarily pay a full-time coach for this. Let's look at premier coaches that actually want to give back to a community, either inviting these kids to their facilities or them giving an hour or 2 of their time and going out into the communities. Speaking to them and finding out why would they want to start doing this thing. You don't have kit. That's a matter of either going and getting from a very well-resourced community, asking them to donate either old kit, or having a program that says every time, maybe going together with like one of the sports companies and saying every time someone buys a rugby boot or soccer boot, another one gets donated to this community. Having an online marketplace essentially where people can go and list any of their unused sporting equipment, cricket bats, tennis rackets, all of these things that lie in people's garages that just, that's not much use to them, but are really, really valuable to someone else. Put them up onto like some sort of like online platform that says, I've got all of these things, where schools and stuff can also log into those things and then be like, okay, these are the things that we need, and start connecting that. That would be like Uber or Airbnb. It's essentially becoming this connector for all of these things, and just trying to make sure that you get all of these things together.
The last example I think is working very well with orchestral instruments. Maybe not orchestral, but instruments, musical instruments. There is a online platform where people donate old equipment, and that generally gets then taken into under-resourced, underprivileged community. There's no reason why similarly can't be done for sports. And I'm sure there is already, and if there isn't, it's just finding the right partner. But okay, I hope that answers you. You don't always have to have the soccer field before you play soccer.
Yeah, that's true.
And again, some of us played cricket and soccer on muddy floors, gravel ground.
Yes.
Of course, we broke our knees and we got arthritis before we needed to. But the point is, we did that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Especially in South Africa that we come from. I mean, I don't think there's any township in South Africa that doesn't have some form of informal soccer club. How is it that they play and not have a grass patch? We do rugby in the same way. The guys at rugby are supposed to be more hardy. Anyway, I hope that answers you. You don't always have that, I need to have this in order to do that. Okay? Just coming back to design thinking again, right? So again, forgive me for deviating slightly. You see, if I'm developing a website, and I know this happens often on social media, so somebody posts now and then, which button looks nicer? Which color should it be? You know that submit button at the end of each questionnaire? There's a nice one. Should it have round edges and red, or should it have square edges and blue? Then you must sort of vote with. So in my mind, I can appreciate design thinking from that perspective, right? How would you consider design thinking from a perspective of a service industry in this case. So you just try and help me or help them understand that a bit. What are the considerations that you must put into place? So one last, so for example, something like this, we just take it for granted that somebody made a bottle and it's out there. But I can assure you, if not thousands, hundreds of thousands of rands went into investment about the design thinking, right? Whether it must be narrow here, the color of the label, the color. So a lot of thought went into not what you as a producer want, what you want your customer to look and what they must experience when they see this bottle. Because what is this bottle competing with? It's competing with 20 other bottles on the shelf. Right? Again, just directly, right? So in the same light, what would be some of the considerations in this case in bringing in the principles of design thinking?
And again, I'm going to go right back to it. It's just about observing and interviewing.
Right.
It's firstly just, and that's how you're basically going and gathering insights. That's what Hussein is talking about, like telling a customer how do you feel this bottle. I mean, they might have started from like a huge bottle with a handle or something like that. Who knows? They might have just thought that was a good idea, and as it went through, they realized these things fit easier in the fridge. It's easier to pack, transport. Like this is how much we can carry. All of these things, and it's going to be the same way that you guys have to go and start doing. So practice empathy and observe and interview your customers right now, or any of the people that you're actually going to try and solve the solution for. I think that also maybe just brings me to this idea of like ways to start, and it's just some of the things that we were thinking about it's about gathering insights, practicing empathy and gathering insights, building those prototypes, like just mock up ideas and doing everything. So it's going really back to how we started talking about these things. And all of those problems you need to start finding out, turn those problems then into questions. So, okay, you've seen it, you've identified it, turn it into questions. And then that's where you sort of use this research methods about past, present, and future. And there's essentially 3 different types of research methods that you would use. But to be able to generate these insights, it's this sort of generative research where you identify new opportunities and you're exploring all of these needs. Evaluative research, where you're gathering all of this feedback and it helps you sort of iterate anything going forward. And then the third one is this validating type of research, where it's about like what is the current state of everything. So like looking at it objectively and trying to say, okay, this is actually what it is. I think go through those type of things. It allows you sort of an easy and a less scary way to start. And I think in essence, it's just about starting. Literally like that. That is it. Just go out there, start, let it be scrappy, let it be
messy.
Let it be like really, really messy. The messier the better sometimes.
And explain to your potential audience, you guys are our pilot or a guinea pig, I don't know what you want to use. We're going to do our best, give us feedback, and we're not promising you the world in this version 1.0. But by version 4.5, I think the experience will be different. But let's start somewhere. But I think there's enough value in what you are proposing, and even if it is scrappy or what you call messy, is still an improvement on what is not there. So for kids who have nothing to do after school or get involved, a little bit of running around the soccer field or a patch, I won't call it a soccer field, is better than, because what they're doing there is they're forming teams. There's different values coming out there. So sports or sporting activity as an excuse to build camaraderie, to build loyalty, to build teamwork, to build communication, so there's a whole lot of other things happening there that they won't get by sitting in the street corner and yelping and drinking and doing whatever, chasing the girls or whatever it is that they're doing, right? So don't be fearful about, it needs to be like where you came from, i.e. a model C school. Everyone is prim and proper, everyone got the same length skirts, everyone, got the same uniform. No, we can have different uniforms, and we're just going to have fun. We're just going to have fun.
Yeah, and that's like an easy start. You can literally do that going to the school, and as Hussein said, like for an hour, just setting up 4 cones or 4 markers and letting kids sort of run from one point to the next, getting some sort of like activity that helps you form your sort of the iterations of what's going to, because now you say, okay, we went in there, this is what the kids did for 1 hour or 2 hours. Excuse me. This is how they felt before, this is how they felt afterwards. These are sort of the ideas that came out of all of this. And then you guys will go back and then you'll say, okay, listen here, let's try to work this thing around. You do that 5, 10 times or whatever it is from these different things. You've already got the startings of a program. It doesn't necessarily mean that you guys would actually be running the program at the end, but now you know physically, like through experimentation, this is what it needs to be able to run this type of program. Okay, yeah, fine. Now you can actually give something written out to the school and saying, this is generally what we're going to be doing for this time, and this is the outcomes of what can happen through that. You package that in some sort of way, and that's when you're going to be going to your sponsors. I mean, like, this is who we are, this is the issue, this is like the problem that we've identified at this place, and this is the solutions of how you can assist. Also, with your lens of knowing that you need to be able to solve their problem. So, you guys are looking at it very much from both sides.
Next, let's put your fears aside now.
Yeah.
We're going to go out and do that.
Start.
We're going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So let's role play, if I can.
Yeah, not a problem.
Let's role play.
Okay.
So he's the principal of a school, or he's the head of department of sports at a school, right? Sell it to us. What are you offering? What do you want to try? Come on.
Yeah, I can go first.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, my interest mostly it's the inactivity that I see around my area. One, it benefits no one.
Our area, right?
Yes, our area. Yes.
Yeah.
It benefits no one.
Right.
So no one is deriving any benefit from it.
Right.
So if I approach him, I would approach the principal from that perspective of saying, yes.
He's the principal.
Oh, he's the principal.
Yeah, talk to him. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Yeah.
What I want us to solve, it's the inactivity that we see around us. Really, it's not benefiting us. We're deriving nothing from it. When there is a world of things that we could be doing, and one of those things, it is sports. Why? One, it's simple. Sport is something like you say, you can pick up a ball and take the kit and they start running around for about 2 hours. They would have done something. You know, they say an idling mind is a devil's workshop. So what we're trying to do is take away that free time of doing nothing for many of the kids around. So if you maybe come on board, we can start simple. Let's not start with something that will be capital intense or whatever. Let's just try it out. Let's see if it will help a couple of kids, 2, 3 in our community. Maybe in the process, we might even discover talent. So let's push this thing without being paid, me and you, from a humanity perspective of saying, let's help these kids. Let's give them 2 hours in a day or 3 hours in a day while they're running around under our supervision, and let's see where it goes. Then we can see if it becomes a bigger thing afterwards. But what I'm asking is, you come on board, I come on board, I take my resources, my time, my everything, you take your resources, your time, without maybe expecting anything in return for now. But let's try to help these kids and together, if we can.
So there's children in there waiting for discipline outside.
Yeah, sorry, as a principal, I really don't have time for all of this. I don't have time to take out 2 hours from my day to be able to do anything. I can give you the okay to be able to be here. What are you actually going to do for my students? Tell me.
So keep in mind the desirability, right?
Yes.
And here, me speaking as someone that wants...
He's very busy. He wants to do it, but
yes.
he doesn't have the teachers. He doesn't have toilet paper, the flushing toilet. So his concerns are so many among the students. So how do you sweeten the deal for him? You know, so that you leave him out, but you get his permission to do it. But you're taking the responsibility of doing it. And I think maybe that's that's an approach. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be, and it could be exactly the thing.
and
You have to understand.
How are you solving his problem? Not by adding. You're not asking for resources. You're not asking for time, of his time, because he doesn't have time. So make it desirable for him. Shazia?
I would say we come to your school and we bring whatever resources we have at the moment, whatever skills we have and whatever we can offer the kids, and we bring whatever coaches we can get around the area, around our community, and we put this time in to show you that we can actually get a team or teams out of your school and how much potential your school kids have or might have, and we're gonna give them time to spend it on something better than just sitting at home doing nothing or playing in the streets, doing something that they're not supposed to do. So I'm coming at you saying, let's give these kids an opportunity to one day maybe be great sportsmen or sportswomen in future, and we start somewhere, even though we don't have much to work with, but we start somewhere and we show you the potential that we have, and we show you the potential that your school kids have.
Okay, so let's look at it another way. Just as an option, very easily you guys can go in and start talking to them about that. Perhaps another tactic, I guess, would go in there and saying, "Hey, Mr. Principal, like, what are you actually struggling with?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even about going in there and selling, hey, listen here, this is what we want to do. What are you guys struggling with?" He might actually come up and say, "You know what, I actually just don't have the ability. I don't have enough teachers to be able to look after all of the kids at all of the time. That's why they're either too many in a certain class, or after school it has to go like this, and I'm not giving enough attention to any of the kids." And at that point, after that, you guys are coming on and being like, "Hey, listen here, for 2 hours of your day, I'm going to take the pressure off one of your educators. We're going to be able to take the pressure off one of the educators, and we're going to take in a safe, secure environment, either within your school grounds, we're going to take 30 to 40 kids away from that educator." Now, what you're actually doing is you're solving his problem. Because so his problem is not necessarily trying to look for, and as Hussein said, it's not trying to look for sporting facilities. It's trying to make sure that everything else is like running within the school. He can't do it because he doesn't have enough hands. All of a sudden, if he's got, for 2 hours, he's got the help of another educator, either looking after kids or helping him with his admin or doing any of these things, for him it's a win, and he doesn't necessarily know where you guys are coming from. And then afterwards, then it'd be like, okay, within these 2 hours, this is what we're actually planning to do with the kids. And you run that for a week, you run that for 2 weeks, however long you want to go and start running that for. He sees maybe on his side, hey, listen, things have been a little bit easier. We haven't had so many kids around here. Like, I can actually manage. Lots of other things are getting done. And the reason behind that is because you guys gave him the ability to concentrate on all of these other things.
My question is, okay, we get into, let's say, the office, the principal's office, and we go, oh, yeah, we're coming at you, but we can't start asking questions. He's going to be like, what are you doing here? Tell me why you're here, obviously. So we can't, how I want to ask this is, what do we say as we're sitting down with him and are like, okay, this is the solution that we're bringing you, but how do we approach it?
Yeah, that's going to cost you, how much you charge per hour. We can't give you the answer to that.
Yeah.
I think the point that we're trying to make is, how are you, I want to use the word pitch, but without confusing it with what we're going to do in the last session. So in this case, the pitch isn't to an investor or someone who's going to fund you, but it's still a pitch. So how do you make your offer in this case desirable? So going back to the whole desirability, right? How do you make it desirable? You're relieving him of something that you ordinarily should be doing, right? But he doesn't have the time. We know the reality in South African schools, right? So you are addressing a very direct problem, but you're asking him, is it an issue? Will it resolve your issue? Will it help you? And he may not see it as 2 hours of sports. He may see it as 2 hours of peace that will open up some other thing for him. He may see it as adding discipline, because sports generally is a disciplinary activity. You create discipline, teamwork, forget all the fighting that happens on a soccer field. Right. So again, your approach is that, right? And I think the reason I wanted to do this is almost to give you the confidence, like on Monday morning, to go and knock on the first school door and say, look, we don't have professional coaches, I'm going to do it. You know, I'm a Gauteng color netball player, and let me just start off with netball. Can you kick a soccer ball? I'm just going to kick around a soccer ball. You know what I'm saying? Just get the first one started.
Yeah, just start. And it doesn't always have to be that principle. Like, there's ways that you can go and find out. There's kids in the neighborhood. There's people that you know that have kids that are in schools. They know of issues that are there. There's teachers, everyone around, and that's where this thing about just trying to build up your knowledge base about what's happening. So eventually, when you do go into and see the principal, you're not asking him for questions. You're like, you have enough of an understanding of what's happening in the environment to say, okay, we sort of see that these are issues, and these are some things that we want to actually come and try to solve for you.
Yeah, man, if maybe I can add this, you know, when I look at the schools in South Africa, there's an element for me that is lacking. Like, if you can take maybe the schools in Mozambique, they would incorporate something of maybe, let's say, the students from a young age, they would start to do something. Maybe they would start to maybe do hair or whatever. And you would see, in the long run, you would see the results of those early stage engagement. Like, you can see them when they come to South Africa, even though maybe they are not into corporate that much, but they are able to do for themselves. That is the approach that we would like to take even with sports. Plus, in places like America, you would find that sort of model is also there. Sports is incorporated into the school up until some people, they even enter the university through sports. But now, why do we want to match it with sports, with school? Because now discipline is already there in school. So if maybe we do it on our own in a township, maybe even if it does not come, no one bothers. You see, but if it's the school, then it's an environment where we can say, if it does not come to the soccer field or anything, then there's people there which we can approach and say, this guy is not keeping up to his promises, he's not doing this, and they can help us now to push him towards that direction of doing things. And that is the approach that I think maybe it can work for us.
You guys got plenty of good ideas, and maybe too many. But going back and doing that research, as Tasneem spoke about, Zubair is now emphasizing that, and I think you'll find the place that you need to play at. You'll find the place that you need to play.
Yeah, it's critical, and maybe just again closing up, like, it's critical. You guys are thinking about sports. It might end up that you're going to go down this road and it goes on to something else. But using sports, try to go as far as you can through sort of that idea. So now you talked about schools in America. Lots of schools in South Africa do the same thing. Private, whether it's Model C or any of these type of schools. Go through that, find out, get the precedent, get all of this, and put all of it down. Try to chart out what happened to kids that entered that school. Where did they go to in the future? Put all of these things down, and that's how you're going to be able to sell it to them later.
Last words before I close up. Are you okay?
Are we okay?
Better than when we started?
Yeah, better than when we started.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I think it was really useful. I think not only did you emphasize some of the points that Tasneem spoke about in our first episode, but give us sort of additional food for thought in terms of the approach. We could have spent a bit more time talking on customer centricity in a different way. That I'll give you Zubair's details, and you can in his bank account, and you can work around that part. But I think don't know that you have a good idea. You need to learn a lot more, both of you, right? And you certainly can make it. You can make it grow.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the second episode. We are preparing for the third episode, and on the third episode, we're going to be focusing on HR or human resources and why it matters and how to build a good team. How it matters and what it takes to build a good team. And I think Black Collar and the 5-6 of you that are there are a good foundation to experiment with that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.